there were four types of annuity. You have the ordinary annuity, you have the deferred annuity, annuity due, and perpetuity. Now, annuity again, no? Annuity is not a type of interest. Annuity still uses compound interest, but the payment is different. Instead of a one-time big-time payment, you're going to pay in installment. So every time a specific what you call this, a specific time period will pass by, you're going to make a certain payment. Okay. Now recall, the first type of annuity is ordinary annuity. Now this ordinary annuity, this type of payment is the most common, wherein you're going to make the payment at the end of every period. Now, excuse me, I have already uploaded the notes that we'll be using today in our MS Teams files. Okay, so the M6. So another rin, no? This one, topic 3, part 4, deferred annuity. So this will be the notes that we'll be using for today's discussion. As usual, everything is here already, including the solutions, okay, including the complete process of how to solve the examples. Okay, naanadali ka na. Excuse me. My goodness. So, gusto lang ito lang. Okay, now let's proceed directly. No? Now, first, what is deferred annuity? Again, recall there are four types of annuity. Ordinary annuity, which we have discussed already. Then this time, you have the deferred annuity. Then you have the annuity due. And lastly would be perpetuity. Okay? Now, I'm going to discuss as one. Doon ano na kung discuss ang annuity due o perpetuity. Okay? Kaya kadali ram sila. Now, for this one, deferred annuity, this will be a separate discussion throughout because it's a bit complicated. So, a bit lang. Now, unsa may naa sa deferred annuity? Okay? For deferred annuity, the first payment is deferred. Deferred meaning delayed or postponed for several interest periods. Okay? Now, so yung pasabutan na. If you're going to look at the cash flow diagram, nani ang scenario. So, let's say at the moment ka nag-borrow ka, not like the ordinary annuity wherein at the end of the first period, immediately you're going to make the payment. Mamana ordinary annuity. But for deferred annuity, you are going to defer or you're going to delay or you're going to postpone your first payment by several interest periods. So for example, kanino, mo ni muhang borrowed amount, okay, ay muhang first payment was made at the 5th period. Now, naaday na sa? Naaday na nga mga senaryo. Now, ang pinaka direct nga best example for this one is kanang buy now, pay later. Diba? Technically, kuan man na siya, no? Tabla ra man naggipahiram ka karon, nya unya na lang kabayad. It's basically deferred annuity. So hiram ka karon, unya nakabayad. So nibayad ka after, let's say, after 5 months, or let's say after 5 years, or let's say after 5 quarters. No? So that is basically the best example for deferred annuity. Buy now, pay later. Now, what is the difference? What are the advantages and disadvantages of deferred annuity compared to ordinary annuity? Now, if you're going to recall, ang ordinary annuity, the moment ka nag-borrow ka, at the end of the first period, immediately, you're going to make the payment. Okay? Now, sa deferred annuity, it's very obvious na di pa ka mubayad na yun. Okay? So, you're going to have several periods first. Okay? You're going to enjoy several periods first na dili sa ka magbayad. Okay? So, mo na ang pinaka-obvious nga advantage. You still have time. You still have time para makabayad sa imong borrowed amount. Para magsugod og bayad eh. Okay? Before you start with the payment, you still have time. So that's the obvious advantage of deferred annuity. Now, how about the disadvantage? Okay? For the disadvantage, even though you have started with the payment late, or your payment was deferred, or your payment was postponed or was delayed, as long as there is time considered, interest will always come in. As long as na ay time nga ni move, okay, na ay time nga involved, permente yun nang naa ang interest. What do I mean by that? So may pasabutan na, sir. Meaning, even if your first payment is delayed, even if wala pa ka nagsugod og pay og bayad, the interest is accumulating already. Okay? Example gani. Bisag imong first payment naa pa sa 5th year. Pero as early as the first period, the 5th year, fifth period, as early as the first period, you have already interest has already accumulated on this one as early as the first period, second period, third period, fourth period. One nag-accumulate na ang mga interest diha bisan pag wala pa nag-start og bayad. Okay? So that is the difference, that is the disadvantage for deferred annuity. So with that, one day, no, mabana-bana nimo automatically, you can immediately say nga mas dako og equivalent interest si deferred annuity compared ni ordinary annuity. Okay? Bisan pa og na-delay imong first nga bayad, no, because of that delay mo unay makaingon nga medyo mas dako ang imuhang bayranan, okay, ang imuhang interest compared sa ordinary annuity. Okay? So that is deferred annuity. Now, how about the formulas? How are we going to solve for the present amount and the future amount? So you have your formulas for present amount and future amount. So for the present amount, medyo pare-parehas sa formula sa ordinary annuity. Pero naalay gamayng kalahian. So muna medyo pare-parehas lang. So ang parehas ra niya no ang kaning nasa ubos I times 1 plus I to the power of M prime lang mo inaada rin. Which is technically pare-parehas naman siya sa formula sa present worth gihapon sa ordinary annuity, di ba? So parehas naman sila og formula. Okay? Then A here parehas ra gihapon. Nakalahi lang kaning numerator. Ang sa formula sa ordinary annuity, excuse me. Sa formula sa ordinary annuity, mauna ang 1 plus I, di ba? To the power, to the exponent, then plus 1. Pero here, mauna ang 1, na dili pa gid plus, minus pa gid. Okay? So mauna ang 1, minus, then 1 plus I there. So maura gid ni mo technically nakalahi sa formula sa present worth for deferred annuity. Okay? And then, if you want to solve for the future worth, just use the formula for compound interest. Okay? So for this one, kuha na rin no, present worth times 1 plus I to the power of n. Inana ra na siya. Now, unsa man ang m prime o n prime, sir? Unsa man na siya, sir? Now, take note. M prime and M prime and n prime should be counted in terms of interest periods or compounded periods. Okay? Now, dili ka pwede mo ihap aning n prime o n prime just like n. Okay? Mo bitong gibutangan ako nag-prime to distinguish the difference between n prime and n. Di pwede nga parehas, maparehas ra ng n prime o n. Dili na sila parehas ha, mabitaw nang gibutangan og prime. Now, again, n prime and m prime should be counted in terms of interest periods or compounded periods. For example, if problem is compounded monthly, then m prime and n prime should be counted monthly. Or if problem is compounded semi-annually, then m prime and n prime should be counted every 6 months. So dili na siya, ang counting na niya dili per year ha. Kung unsa nga klase sa compounding ang problem mo na counting niya. But unsaon man pag solve, unsaon man pag-determine sa m prime and n prime. Okay? So here, sir, giunsa man ni pag-determine sa nga mauna diha ang n prime, mauna diha ang n prime. Now, to determine n prime and m prime, okay, just look for the first payment. Pangitaa lang ang sinugdanan sa imuhang bayranan. Then, from that first payment, you go back one period before. Okay? You go back one period before, then that will be the dividing point between your M prime and your N prime. Okay? Again, you go back one period. As I've said, one period. Dili 1 year, dili 1 month, dili 1 quarter, dili 1 half a year, one period. Pasabot ana, magdepende kung unsa ang compounding sa problem. Kung ang compounding sa problem quarterly, di iyahang one period, one quarter. Kung ang compounding sa problem kay monthly, di iyahang one period kay 1 month. Kung ang compounding sa problem kay semi-annually, di iyahang period is 6 months. Okay? So mo na nga, one period. This is in terms of period. Okay? So you go back one period, okay, from the start of the first payment, then that is the dividing point for your M prime and your N prime. Okay? So, ako po nang giklaro diri. So, also, M prime will start from the beginning until one period before the start of the first payment, while N prime will be the remaining period after M prime until the last payment. So, ako na siyang gi-specify yan. But then, of course, mas dali masabtan kung naay example. Sige, let's apply it on an example. You have example number 1. A lathe for a machine shop costs 60,000 pesos if paid in cash. Now, on the installment plan, so pwede i-cash. Pero, na ay plan nga pwede sa di-installment. So, on the installment plan, the purchaser should pay 20,000 pesos down payment. Napod ng word nga down payment, no? And 10 quarterly installments. The first due at the end of the first year after purchase. If money is worth 15% compounded quarterly, determine the quarterly installment. Okay, so in ani ang cash flow diagram sa example number 1. Na kay cash price or cash sa machine shop is 60,000 pesos. Again, ang kanang cash price that is the equivalent to present amount. Okay? And then, pero kung installment plan ka na may down payment. So take note again down payment is always at the start. Pero mintigin ang naasugod. And then you have 10 quarterly installments. So every quarter na kay installments or na kay payments, pero 10 ra ka buok. Okay? Wherein the first payment will be due at the end of the first year. So kung mo na imuhang year number 1, take note na for this problem, ang compounding niya is quarterly. So ang 1 year is divided into 4 equal parts. Ang first payment magsugod diri sa end sa first period mo nang start sa mong first payment. And then 10 ka buok iyahang payments nga buhaton. So 10 ka quarterly installments. So you have here from the first one 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9 10. Okay? So ni end day siya saan sa man 3.25 3 and 1/4 year. Di siya ni end. Okay? Na, unsaon man ni pag-solve? So, obviously, gipangita ang installment, ang kaning A may gipangita. Kaya kay naamantay present amount. Then, we just utilize the given, since naamang kay present amount, we just have to use the present amount formula. Okay? But, take note nga ang formula for present amount, okay? Moram na nyo na, ang A may gipangita na may P. Ang I, wala rin problema. Let's see. Again, take note for annuity, kailangan parehas og time period ang imuhang payment o ang imuhang interest. For this one, ang iyang payment or installments kay 10 quarterly. Okay? Nya, per quarter. Ang iyang interest kay quarter sad. So, it's very fortunate nga parehas ra, no? We don't need to convert. So you have here 15% compounded quarterly, and then ang iyang installments quarterly sad. So okay ra, so ratane. So naaray ay. Ang problema na lang is N prime o M prime. How are we going to determine this two? So again, determining M prime and N prime. This will always be the first step to do. Okay, kung deferred annuity mo ang problem. tanawa gyud unsa you solve first M prime and N prime. For this problem, considering interest is compounded quarterly, following the start and end respectively will be, okay, so inani ang mahitabo. Again, recall, look at the first payment. Then from that first payment, you go back one period. But take note, kaninga problem, quarterly man ang iyahang period, iyahang compounding, quarterly man. So therefore, ang imuhang one period is 1 quarter only. Okay? So mo na, go back pag 1 period, kanira, 1 quarter, then this is the dividing point for M prime and N prime. N prime will be on the right side until the end of the payments, and M prime will be on the left side until sa imuhang start. So from here on, we're going to count. Okay? We're not going to count in terms of years, but we're going to count in terms of compounding niya. But since this problem is quarterly man ang compounding, so we're going to count per quarter. So for M prime, that would be, kung muna ang start sa M prime, you have 0, 1, 2, 3. Okay? So M prime is 3. And for N prime, since this is the start for N prime, then if this is 0, then you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. N prime is 10. Okay, so we now have M prime and N prime. Therefore, all we just have to do is substitute all given into the formula. So recall, this was the formula for present amount of deferred annuity. But remember that down payment is part of the price. So recall nga ang problem na apay down payment. Okay, be always aware of that kay kadaghan na rabasad na nahitabo nga narong kay nalimtan ang down payment, wala na appeal. So you have to thoroughly check your solution, your problem, your given, review. For this one, to down payment. Down payment should be included in the price. Therefore, ang cash price di ay would be ang down payment plus the total sa imuhang payments nga gibuhat. So substituting everything, you have the cash price of 60,000, you have the down payment of 20,000, then A is unknown. Then you have the interest, 0.15 over 4, N prime is 10. Okay, negative ni ha, negative N prime. So negative 10 divided by I times 1 plus I to the power of M prime. So ang M prime positive. Okay, so with this, using your calculator, you will arrive with 5,439.18 pesos. Okay, so far, any questions? Mga pangutana. Pangutana for example number 1. Have any questions? Ayo. Saan mo yung mas dyan, Hindi na baka ni sila no, nangatog na eh. Nangatog na eh.
Wala sad sir ay.
Sige. So yeah, dito nagkape-kape rin na sila, kape-kape, snack, ice cream, pan with coke. Sus, my goodness. Kasuya. Okay. Himo-himo rag sandwich, sliced bread, bakahan, yeah, with matching palaman. Ay, how nice. Okay. So, wala na yung pangutana, no? So again, let's have another example. So let's make the problem a bit complicated. I-complicate na to gamay. Okay? Okay, lisod mo sa gayog. Ang ato example, perminti lang sa yun. So, ato sang buhatan og lisod. Okay? May sa na example ng lisod. Sample number 2. An engineer desires to establish a fund for which he will deposit a fixed amount every half a year for 5 years. Half a year after the 5th year, he will then start to withdraw 10,000 pesos every half a year for another 5 years. If the fund established will be at an interest rate of 5% compounded quarterly, how much should the fixed deposit be? So for example, number 2, this is the equivalent cash flow diagram. As you can see here, sa problem, may usa ka engineer, okay, who wished to make a deposit every half a year for straight 5 years. So for straight 5 years, every half a year, may mag-deposit, that will be a total of 10 deposits. And then half a year later, from the half a year after the 5th year, so after half a year, magsugod din siya og withdraw. Okay? Withdraw 10,000 pesos every half a year for another 5 years. So, technically, katong iyahang gi-deposit, mo iyahang gi-withdrawhan. So, tag 10,000 ang iyahang gi-withdraw for the next 5 years at every half a year gihapon. Okay? But the question is, pila man di ay ang gi-deposit para maka-withdraw og tag 10,000 after 5 years. So, sayon na sir. Kung pila iyahang gi-withdraw, mura gyud na iyang gi-deposit. Well, technically true. Okay? Kung pila imuhang gi-withdraw, mura gyud na isud sa imuhang gi-deposit. But take note, but take note again, as long as there is time involved, there will always be interest. So therefore, kung naay interest, dili na mahitabo nga kung pila ra imuhang gi-withdraw, maura sa nang imuhang kung pila ra imuhang gi-deposit, maura sa imong gi-withdraw, dili. Okay? Dili na inana ka simple ay kuan lang sir, i-add up lang na tanan sir, pila man tag 10,000 niya na po ka buok 100,000. Adi 100,000 ra puti sila sir, tag 10,000 pod kada usa para maka-withdraw sa check tag 10,000. Dili na ka-simple because again naa kay interest in play sa imong problem. So permitting ang interest nagdagan every time there is time here. So on the first payment, pagbayad nimo ana naaday na interest ni patong, pag-deposit di ay. Pag sunod nimong deposit na ana po ila ang interest ni patong. So in short, tanan nimo nga deposit, okay, maapunan og interest. Natungod sa imuhang deposit nga gihimo together with the interest, okay, that is the reason why you can make 10,000 pesos of withdrawal every month. Okay? So in short, ang imuhang ang deposits diri should not be equal to 10,000 po. Kaya kung tag 10,000 okay. Ano to? Okay. Okay. Kung tag 10,000 okay? Nga na may interest, kada deposit na ay interest. So, syempre, ang total ani 100,000 na daan, which is equal na daan sa imuhang gi-withdraw. Asa man napuntang interest? So, dili gid mahitabo nga ang imuhang gi-deposit diri tag 10,000 pud equal ra pud diha. It should be a little bit lesser siguro. Okay? Mas gamay ang iyahang gi-deposit nya, ang interest mo oy ni puno, okay? To make it nga maka-withdraw kag tag 10,000 na rin. Okay? So, ina na ang senaryo. Dili pwede nga diretso-diretso lang. No? Bisan ganig mag-open kag savings account. Okay? Yes, ang imong savings account, gamay kaayo og interest na siya. Pero, naagya po interest. Diba? Sample, nagbutang ka 100,000. After 5 years, dili na 100,000 lang gihapon. Naagid na tubo. Let's say, natubuan ba ka nag 5 pesos, for example. So, nahimong 1,005. So, in short, it will not always be the same with respect to time. Pero, pwede siya maparihas. You can say nga equivalent na siya if they are on the same time period. Let's say, ang total aning imuhang withdrawal, ang total ana i-reflect sa present, o ang total sa imuhang deposits i-reflect sa present, they are the same on that same time period. Or ang imuhang withdrawals, ang total sa imuhang withdrawals i-reflect ang future. Then ang total po sa imuhang deposits i-reflect sa future. Then you can say po nga equal na silang duha. Okay? If they are on the same time period sa future. Pero kung lain-lain sila nga time period, di ka kaingon nga the same na siya. Okay? Now how are we going to solve? By the way, tanan akong gisulti ganiha, it's included here. So in this problem, there are two types of transactions. First is the payment for the fund done every 6 months for 5 years. So ang payment diha is this one, or in short, the deposits. And the second one is 10,000 pesos withdrawal every 6 months for 5 years. So naa kay duha ka scenario dere, no? Imuhang deposit o imuhang withdrawal. Now, this is a basic example of saving now for use later. Okay? So, tablarag nagtigom ka karon para na kay magamit in the future. Okay? Of course, what you have withdrawn is just equal to the deposit, but together with the interest if coupled with time. Okay? So kung imo na siyang kung imuhang mga deposits dili kung wala na nimo gibuhat sa bangko, let's say nag-alkansiya ra ka, of course kung pila imuhang gibutang sa alkansiya, mo ra pud na imo makuha. Diba? Pero kung imo nang gibutang sa bangko nga naay interest, of course, equal na gyud na siya, pero kung naay interest, ma-add up ang interest. Okay? So, very important to remember that without the effect of time, without the effect of time, your deposit is equal to your withdrawals. Kung wa lang yun na time in play. Or in short, you can only say nga equal na sila if they are on the same time period. So, muna akong gi-explain balik-balik before nga, you cannot say nga equal ang piso karon o ang piso pag year 2000. Okay? Pwede ra ka makaingon nga equal na, pwede rin naman sila ma-compare or pwede rin sila mo ma-equate if ang piso karon imong kuhaon, pila da equivalent niya pag year 2000. Okay? Or ang piso pag year 2000, pila da equivalent niya karong year 2021. Ano? So you can only equate or you can only compare if they are both on the same time period. Okay? For this one also, makaingon ra ka nga equal na silang duha if they are on the same time period. Okay? Now, this will be the main point to consider in solving this problem. So, mo ni ato ang himuon na basis on how to solve this problem. Okay? Imuhang deposit will always be equal to your withdrawal if they are on the same time period. Now, asa man ta mangita og unsa man nga time period atong pangitaon para makaingon ta nga equal. Let's say arita sa first period sir, equal silang duha at that period. Or let's say arita sa fourth period sir, equal silang duha on that period. Or let's say on the 8th period. Okay? Pwede na. Pwede sana, no? Pero ang pinakadali, okay? Since naa naman tay formula daan, since naa naman tay formula daan para sa present amount o para sa future amount, how about we utilize those two existences? We utilize those two formulas. We take advantage of those two formulas. Since naa naman kay formula para sa present, naa na sa kay formula para sa future, anong dili man nato na gamiton? Diba? So recall, dara atong mga formula, present o ang future. So since naa man tay formula sa present o sa future, we utilize these two. But take note, imuhang future dependent sa present. So therefore, para makasolve ka sa future, kailangan pa rin mo ang present. Since inaana naman lang gidi ay, how about diretso na lang ta sa present? Okay? Anong mo lisod-lisod pa man ta? Present na lang diretso. Excuse me. Ano yung mataburo? Now, to realize the previous consideration of deposit is equal to withdrawal, the total amount of all the deposit should be equal to the total amount of all the withdrawals. Okay? But then again, these two, ang imuhang total sa deposit, okay, o imuhang total sa withdrawals, these two total amounts should be at the same time period. Ako ganang specified yan. Pwede ra ka maka-equal kung naa sila sa parehas nga time period. Okay? The best way to equate the total amounts of every transaction would be either using the present amount or the future amount. Okay? Nga nang best way man sila. Nga dili man mo kuhaon ang total sa 3rd year, sir. Or total baka sa 8th year. As I've said before, since naa naman kay formula sa present o sa future, we utilize the given advantage. Okay? So, from the two methods, using the present amount is much easier. Okay? So with that, present amount sa imuhang deposit should be equal to the present amount of your withdrawal. Okay? So they are on the same time period na, puros nasa present. Pangutana na lang, how to solve for the present sa deposit and how to solve for the present sa withdrawal. Mao na lang na, may pangutana. Okay? So, kung gibutang din, no? The question now is how to get the present amount of both deposit and withdrawal. To determine how, we must look at the cash flow diagram. From the cash flow diagram, we can divide it into two, the deposit side and the withdrawal side. Okay? Again ha, mo ni naka-advantage sa cash flow diagram. It's not compulsory, but it can help you definitely. Okay? So, diba, mao man ni ato ang cash flow diagram, no? Na sa ato ang cash flow diagram, we can group this into two. So, naa may duha ka klase sa transaction diri. Ang deposit side ug ang withdrawal side. Okay? Since naman siya duha ka grupo, let's break this into two groups. Okay? Now, since gibungkag man tani into two groups, let's try to look at each group individually. Tagsa-tagsa o na tuog tanaw. Okay? Looking first at the deposit side, we can have the following cash flow diagram. So kung ang kanilang no, kung ang deposit lang aside mo itong tanawon ato tong i-disregard ang withdrawal, ari lang jud kamo tan-aw. Okay? So inani ang resulta nga cash flow diagram. Now, with that resulting cash flow diagram, it's very obvious. Unsa nga klase na sa topic, di ba? Na kay equivalent amounts of payment, at equivalent periods of time, every 6 months. Di ba annuity man eh? Okay? Nya, type of annuity niya is obviously ordinary annuity. Okay? Ang iyahang first payment was made at the end of the first period. Okay? So, this is ordinary annuity. Now, how to solve for the present worth of the ordinary annuity? Okay, so from this, you can see that the series of deposits actually form an annuity. And it is an ordinary annuity to be specific. So the present amount for the deposit would be following the present amount formula for the ordinary annuity. As you can see, since ang porma sa ato ang deposit, okay, group, deposit group, puro naman siya ordinary annuity, then we can just use the formula for present amount, okay, sa ordinary annuity, which was mo ni ang formula, no? Sa present amount sa ordinary annuity. So recall that was A times 1 plus I to the power of n minus 1 all over I times 1 plus I to the power of n. Okay? So this time, look, mo na ni, no? Mauna ni ang formula nga gamiton ra para makuha ang present worth sa deposit na side. Okay na, nanatay formula para sa deposit na side. How about sa withdrawal nga side? This time, looking at the withdrawal side, we can have the following cash flow diagram. Okay? Sige, let's disregard ang katong deposit. Di natututan-awon. Let's look at the withdrawal side nga kana lang gid siya alone. Let's assume nga maura gid na ang nahitabo. Okay? Puro sa withdrawal, nga nag-start ang withdrawal at the halfway between 5th year and 6th year. Okay? As you can see, this is also very familiar, di ba? As you can see, di ba, ang porma sa ato ang withdrawal kay deferred annuity raman. Technically, deferred annuity ra. Di ba? You have here ang iyahang first na withdrawal kay naa sa in-between sa 5th o sa 6th year. Okay? So, ang start niya is diri pa, layo pa kaayo. So, naay deferred nga period in between sa start og sa imuhang interest og sa start sa imuhang withdrawals. So basically, this is deferred annuity. Now, since deferred annuity man then we can solve for the present amount of this one using the formula for deferred annuity. Okay? So, ako gyapon ang gi-include rin. From this, you can see that the series of withdrawals actually actually form an annuity, and it is a deferred annuity to be specific. So, the present amount for the withdrawals would be following the present amount formula for the deferred annuity. So, in short, ang deferred annuity na po na ito ang gamiton nga formula para makuha ang present amount sa withdrawal. Okay? Now, ato na lang since naamaning A sa withdrawal which is 10,000 pesos, naasad ning I, ang atuwa na lang is kaning N prime ug M prime. Mao na lay ato ang pag-determine. Okay, so how to solve for N prime and M prime? Okay, no? So again, looking at the withdrawal side only, from the first payment, or for this one, from the first withdrawal, you go back one period. But for this problem, ang period niya, ang compounding niya is kuan man, no, every half a year man. So yung period is every half a year. So we go back ratag half year, which is dere sa 5th year. Now this is the dividing point for your M prime and for your N prime. So what we're going to do now is just count. Pila ang M prime, pila ang N prime. Okay? So counting it, for M prime, mo ni ang start sa M prime. Now since every half a year man ang compounding ani, okay? So we were going to count every half a year. So 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So M prime has 10 periods. How about N prime? For N prime, this is the start, no, of your N prime. So this will be 0. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. N prime also has 10. So therefore, okay, from this, considering the transactions are semi-annual, the count for M prime and N prime will be semi-annually. Thus, M prime is 10 and N prime is equal to 10. Okay? So, nanata, no? Na natin formula para sa present amount sa deposits, okay, which is this one. And then we also have the formula to determine the present amount of all the withdrawals. Wala na sa tayo problema. Okay? Now, we can solve na. But, take note, remember, okay? This is no, itong klarohon. Since determining how to get the present amount of both deposit and withdrawals are now known niya, supposedly, we can now proceed with solving the problem. Supposedly. Okay? But, there is still the problem of the payment, not the same with interest. Take note, basta annuity gani, dapat parehas og compounding ang imuhang payment ug ang imuhang interest, or parehas og period ang imuhang payment ug interest. Di ba to parehas, sir? Anong di mo to parehas? Let's read back. Okay? For the problem, the withdrawals and the deposits were both half a year. Pareha silang half a year. Okay? Pero ang interest, you have here 5% compounded quarterly. Uy, quarterly. Di parehas. Ang payment o ang deposit o ang withdrawal, semi-annual. Pero ang interest kay quarterly. So for this one, of course, you have to make a conversion. Kailangan na to i-convert ang interest into compounded semi-annually. Gikan sa compounded quarterly, we have to convert it into compounded semi-annually. Okay, again, dapat parehas na silang duha. Dili pwede maglain-lain. Okay? So recall, para mag-convert you just have to equate. Okay? Equate the ERI of both scenario. So for this one, no? Supposedly, now, this is related to the previous discussion of the time period for payment. It should be the same for the compounding. Payment is made. Okay. Ako na nang ipangsulti niya. Again, ERI. Equate the ERI. So, first, from the given nga quarterly, then ang ERI para sa ano. So, for this one, quarterly, from quarterly, moong semi-annually. So, what you just have to do is substitute the given, then use your calculator, will have the answer. Now, naani gamay nga concern no regarding aning pag-shift solve. Kaya naay uban nga estudyante, nag-exam siguro to duha. Nabalaka sila kay ang answer sa ilahang calculator lahi. Okay? Sample no, midterm siguro to or assignment ba to? Limot ko. Ang gihatag nga interest kay 15%. Pero, kailangan man siya i-convert. So, pag-convert, nahimo ng 14 point, pila man ba? 14, wait. Amurag 7.5% man siguro to ang original. So, 7.5% na kailangan siya i-convert. Pero, pag-convert, okay, nahimo ng 7.454%. So, gikan sa 7.5 na himong 7.454. Now, na ni voice out sa lang concern, nga ilahang calculator ang nigawas nga answer pag shift so, dako kay diferensya. So, gikan sa dapat unta 7.454 or 0.07454, imbis nga unta ka na ang answer, ang nigawas sa ilaha 0.0229. Murag mo ito ha, 0.0229. Okay? Now, if ever maka-experience mo na, that is a cause for concern. Nga naman, daily dapat mahitabo nga lagyo kayo og diferensya ang imuhang given padung sa conversion. So di na mahitabo nga dako kayo diferensya gikan sa 7.5 nahimo na lang 2.29%. Di na pwede. Okay? Dapat mag-convert mo lang gani ka, doon lang kay diferensya dili na mahitabo nga dako kayo. Example ka to, sige kan sa 7.5 nahimong 7.454. Also for this one, gikan sa 5% na himong 5.03%. O gikan sa 0.05 na himong 0.0503. So pag maka-experience mo na, okay, you have to take caution kay kung dako kayo og diferensya, automatic wrong gid na. Di ka na di na mahitabo nga kung ano, di na mahitabo nga ang imuhang converted nga interest kay dako kayo og diferensya sa imuhang given nga interest. Okay? Dili gina siya always na siya nga dili dako kayo og diferensya. Except lang siguro kung dako kayong interest, 1 million % baka. Except lang siguro kung inana. Kaya dako, kay diferensya, i-convert. Pero gagmay, di ba na may tabo nga na 1 million % nga interest. So, may tabo, gagmay ra gid gyud. So, yahapong difference, gagmay ra sad pod. Sir, what if inana, sir? Unsa may mong buhaton, sir? So, kung inana nga senaryo, ang problema na, ambot lang, ang kalkyo or ang nagkalkyo. Mo na yung pangutana, no? So, kung ang nagkalkyo mo ay problema, so it's either na baka hayop sa pag-input sa mga values, okay? Or nasayop baka mo equation pagporma, okay? Or imong solusyon mismo mo sayop. Nana, no? Okay? Pero sir, what if sir, sakto mong gid siya niya, lahi mo gid iya answer. Na for inana nga senaryo, magbantay-bantay mo, no? Pasig na ay kuwang parenthesis, okay? Yeah, for example, kani siya, kuan ra ba? Nara bay equal sign. So, syempre kung naa kay equal sign, na jud kay left side sa equal sign, naa kay right side sa equal sign. Okay? Now, there are other calculators na kung dili na nimo i-enclose og parenthesis ang tibuok left side o tibuok right side, lain iyang ipagawas nga answer. So, nakasuway ko ana, no? Nga nag-equate. Okay, nya pag shift sub lain mag-answer. So akong gisuwayan, gi-enclose na ko og parenthesis tibuok left side ug ang tibuok right side. Okay? So pag shift solve na ko, na-solve na gid og taron. Kung unsa yang answer mao na gid sakto na gid. So magbantay-bantay mo na ay ubang calculators nga inana sensitive sa parenthesis or sensitive sa pag-groupings nimo sa imong equation. So dapat magbantay-bantay ka. So, muna kong giingon nga it's either ang nagkalkyo or ang kalkyo mismo. So, magbantay-bantay ka, okay? Kung ang kalkyo, pwede guba ang kalkyo or hinay na ang kuan baka battery or hinay na kaiyan na baka yung solar power. So, muna nga, magka-problema sa siya when it comes to computation. Pero kung ang nagkalkyo mo ay problema, it's either nasayop pag-encode or kuan no, dili ka suito sa imong kalkyo, nasayop baka ka og di sad nasayop. Dili man kaswito sa imong kalkyo so kakaibaw nga dapat dayon ta i-parenthesis ko na tibuok. So kakaibaw no nga nana di ay dili ka familiar di ay. So magbantay-bantay mo sa inyong kalkyo. Make sure nga kamao na gid mo mogamit sa inyong kalkyo. Make sure nga kamao mo kalikot. So may pasabot sa kalikot. Tinkering, okay? Kamao mo tinker sa inyong calculator sa iyang different modes, sa iyang different yang different nga mga ano nga pwede magamit nga mga functions. So mas maayo nga familiar gid mo. Okay? So nana again take note basta dako gani kaayo og diferensya ang converted nga interest kumpara sa original nga interest. That's a cause for concern. Kaya posible sayop na siya kung dako jud kayo og diferensya. Okay? So from there again na naman tayo rate nga 5.03% or 0.0503. Now, the new interest will be 5.03% compounded semi-annually. This will be the new interest that will be used to solve the problem. Okay? So, muna na itong gamitin karon, dili na katong 5% alone. Okay? And also, ang ato ang M this time, ang compounding, should be semi-annual, dili quarterly. Okay? So, ang kayang original kay 5% compounded quarterly man. So, this time, the new interest should be 5.03% compounded semi-annually. Okay? So, let's go back sa equal dapat ang present worth sa deposit ug ang present worth sa withdrawal. Okay? Yung ang ato ano lang no is substitute every given. Substitute tanang given. You will have A times, okay, dari no sa para sa deposit, then para sa withdrawal 10,000. So you can see here, A ray anon. So by calculator, answer is 780.056 pesos. Okay? So far, any question for problem number 2? Mga pangutana para sa problem number 2. Wala na guys? Ayo. Ayo. Ayo.
Wala ra, sir.
Wala. Murag preparehas sa may natubag eh. Ganihan. Kasi di uban eh. Paano yung sir? Ano rin eh? Kasi naglubaan na yung pangatog diya ba? Lumibas maestro taon. Okay. Sir, napay lang example, sir. Now, example number 2 ra ko to bang akong gibutang diri sa notes. Okay? Magbutang ta ko example number 3 pero naay mas tinot nga o ano, naay mas tinot nga ihatag nga example. Okay? Ikatulong nga example. Sa may mas nindot, sir. Sa ikatulong nga example, same gyapon. Excuse me. Same gyapon nga problem which is problem 2. Okay? Maura gyapon nga problem no problem 2. Pero excuse me. Pero just like sa solution sa ato ang midterm before, atong sample number 4, ay sample, problem number 4, mas karo to. Just like ato, di ba? There are different ways to solve that problem. So naay taas nga pamaagi, naasay bubo nga pamaagi. For this example, naasay daghang pamaagi pag solve ani. Okay? So sa mga pinakadali nga gibuhat nato, it's either i-convert nato ang kuhaon nato ang total or i-equate nato ang total sa present or i-equate nato ang total sa future. Okay? So gisolve nato ang present. Pwede na sad mag-solve mo sa future. Pero there's also another way. Okay? Nga dili present ug dili future. Sige, let me snip sa pa. Snip, snip, snip. Okay, let me explain. Unsa man ang pamaagi, sir? Nga dili present, dili future. Okay? Sige, sige, sige. Uy, wag na ko open. Okay. Ano yun, no? Nailan yung pamaagi. Diba, at first, dere man tato. Dere ta sa present. Uy, dere ta sa present. Atong gikuha ang total nga present sa tanang withdrawals ug total nga present sa tanang deposit. Then, gi-equate. Pero pwede sad nga future sa tanang withdrawal ug future sa tanang deposit. Pero, since ang future, kung naa kay deferred annuity, ang future kay moagi ra mag-present, then therefore, much better kung present na lang gamiton. Pero, napagilaing pamaagi na. Okay? Now, pwede pa nimo sila ma-equate on a certain time period nga mas dili ka maglisod gihapon. Maura sa present or sa future. Maura dire, no? So there's also a certain area sa ato ang problem nga pare-parehas ra sa gi-compare nimo sa present or sa future. Naara kay formula diretso. Asa man adapit. Okay? Now, nani mitabo? Tuningiro gamay. Di ba pwede man? Di ba pag at first atong gikuha ang total sa tanang deposit, ikuha na to equivalent present. Di ba? Pero how about the other way around? Pwede man sad nga kuhaon na to tanang equivalent future worth. Diba? Mao man na ang future. Kuhaon na to equivalent future worth sa tanang deposit. Pwede, di ba? So the other way around. Sa may gamit na sir. Sige. Leave it bisa ang deposit. Arita sa withdrawal. Di ba? Atong gibot sa withdrawal, gikuha na to equivalent total niya padung sa present gyud dire sa start. Okay, di ba? Na present. Pero, pero. Pwede raman sad. Yeah. Noon lang nato ang total nga present amount ani nila tanan there is a fifth period. O diha lang. Dili na to ilahos dito sa zero. So let's say present sa withdrawal, ya kani dili man siya present, future man future sa deposit. Okay? Sir, nganong diha naman sa fifth period nimo gibutang sir. Okay? Diha na ko gibutang kay mag-abot man silang duha si present sa withdrawal ug ang future sa deposit. So in this way, since same man sila og time period, pwede na to i-equate. So with that, pwede ta maka present sa withdrawal equals future sa deposit. Okay? So this is the other way of solving this problem. Pero sir, unsa pa man nato na pag-solve sir? Sige, unsaon pag-solve? Okay? Same gihapon sa atong gibuhat sa notes. Ato silang grupuhon, ato silang bungkagon. So, lahi na to ang deposit, ilahi ang withdrawal. Sige, arita sa deposit first. Okay? Let's look at this. Okay? Nga deposit lang alone. Wait. Okay. Let's look at this nga deposit lang alone. Now, as you can see here, okay? As you can see here, di ba ordinary annuity raman eh? Okay? Ordinary annuity, future worth lang ang atong solbon. Di ba? Ordinary annuity raman gyapon eh. Just like sa ato ang solution before sa problem number 2, ordinary annuity raman to pero present worth lang. For this one, ordinary annuity raman gyapon eh pero future worth lang. Okay? So, we can have this DI as ang ato ang future worth sa deposit. Okay? Ato nang gamiton tong formula sa ordinary annuity which was A times you have 1 plus I to the power of N minus 1 all over I. Okay? Okay, so nanatay formula para sa future worth sa deposit. How about ari na sadta sa withdrawal? Again, ang ato mang gilahi pagtan-aw ang deposit, we're going to look at withdrawal also as a separate entity. So for that one, ato usod na siyang i-separate. Kana. Hinta na. Sige, kana. Any familiarity with this one? Now, if we're going to look closely, di ba maura man gid ni siya og ordinary annuity? Diba? Sir, ordinary annuity raman na sir. Okay? Ang iyaha lang start, kung imo siyang himuong ordinary annuity, mo lang niyahang start, mo niyahang zero. Okay? Nya, gisolve lang na to ang present worth. Di ba ordinary annuity raman gihapon eh? So mo ni ang start 0, so pwede na to ni usbon, mo na to na 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay? So with that, ang ato adang present worth para sa withdrawal, we're just going to follow the present worth formula para sa ordinary annuity. So this will be 10,000, okay, times you have 1 plus I to the power of N minus 1 all over I times 1 plus I to the power of N. Okay? So, puro sa naman ni ordinary annuity, sir. So with that, going back here, since naaman sila sa same time period which is on the 5th year, pwede na nato sila ma-equate. So kung pwede na nato sila ma-equate, therefore, okay, therefore, ang present worth sa withdrawal which is 10,000, okay, times you have 1 plus, mo gyapon no, 0.05, 0.0503 divided by 2, kasi semi-annual mo ni, to the power of, arita sa present worth sa withdrawal. Unsa man niyang N? So therefore, take note pa na ito diha, di ba? M times T. Pila man ang iyang time? Since ato ang starting niya ang 5th year man, so muna ang 0. So therefore, there are 5 years for this alone. So this will be, okay, to the power of 5 minus 1 all over. Okay? All over, you will have present man to ni, so 0.05 0.03 all over 2 times 1 plus 0.0503 all over 2 to the power of 2 times 5. Okay? So this is the present worth for the withdrawals, which is equal to the future worth of all deposits. Ang future worth sa deposit, ordinary annuity remedy. Okay? So you will have A times, okay? A times 1 plus 0.0503 all over 2 to the power of 2 times pila may time sa ato ang deposits. 5 years gihapon. Okay? So you will have 2 times 5 gihapon. Okay? 2 times 5 minus 1 all over. Since future worth man so all over I rani dere 0.0503 divided by 2. Okay? So with this, ang only unknown is A. So, inig-solve ni mo ana, ang imuhang A diha should be parehas ra og answer sa ato ang gisolve ganiha. Okay? Sir, wala lagi deferred annuity diha, sir. Wala lagi gamit ang deferred annuity, sir. Kung pwede ra di ay inanaon. Now, yes, no? Pwede ra inanaon, wala ra ta ni gamit og deferred annuity, puro ra ordinary annuity. But, na ay but. Okay? Not at all times nga pwede mag-abot ang future sa before ug ang present sa after. Okay? So, not at all times nga mag-abot ang future dire ug ang present ani. Not at all times. Sir, unsa man ang hitabo sir? What if ang imuhang withdrawals kay after pila ka years pa, or let's say ni-erog ni. Okay? Or let's say imuhang withdrawal kay na-postpone or na-defer or na-delay. Hindi na sir. Unsa man na siya? For example, let me give you an example. Okay? Pension. Sir, unsa man patong sa sir? Anong may nanaman ng pension? Okay na. Let me give you a slight idea regarding SSS or GSIS. Ana mo man sila mga maghatag og pension ng SSS or GSIS. Okay? Now, ari lang ko sa SSS kay private company man ko, so SSS mo ako ang equivalent nga kampanya. Kung public ka or government ka adto sa GSIS. Kung private ari sa SSS. Okay? Now, compulsory na nga mohatag ka og contribution sa SSS. Sino nga nang compulsory man ang suki? Ang ganang kansi kay Mr. mo anang bayad sir nga magsigit tag bayad di mi ganahan mo bayad sir. Now, under the law na siya nga compulsory kang bayad. Okay? And also compulsory sa tingmuhang kumpanya. You and the company. Okay? Compulsory nga mohatag og contribution. So kami ding duha sir ng kumpanya gapo. Yes. Because dapat inyo nang gitungaan na ay parte sa employer, na ay parte sa employee. Okay? For example, naghatag ka og contribution nga tag 500, okay? Sa SSS. So ang company entitled or compulsory nga mohatag sad og equal amount sa unsa imong gi-contribute. So meaning kung nihatag kag 500, ang kumpanya required nga mohatag sa 500. So in short, ang imong gi-contribute a total of 1,000. Okay? So inana. Sir, anong kailangan kita mabayad na sir? It's very unfair, sir. Ngana, no? Ako na sa doon na magsigig ka deduction na akong sweldo. Kasayang, basta akong sweldo ba? Ako na sa doon. Pero nakatrabaho ko, nakarealize ko dapat targiday Okay? O naman, because that will be the source of your pension. Mo na'y kuhaan nga kwarta para sa imuhang madawat nga pensyon pohon. Example, na give you an idea po no sa SSS, excuse me. Sa SSS, just a minimum of 10 years nga contribution, pwede na ka muhunong sa imong contribution, makadawat na ka og pension ana. But take note, ang pension madawat inig senior citizen na nimo. Dili kay dawat diha din after. Inig senior citizen na diha pa ka makadawat sa imong pension. Okay? So muna perfect example sa kung giingon ninyo nga yes, pwede kaayo og kanang nag-deposit na ka pero imong withdrawal unya pa may tabo. So kanang example, kung 10 years nagsugod kog trabaho pag 21, So, pag edad na ko og 31, i-assume na ko nga continuous ang ako ang pagpanarbaho. Pag edad na ko og 31, awan na eligible na ko nga nakoy 10 years nga contribution sa SSS. So, eligible na ko para mo kuan no, mo eligible na ko nga makakuha og pension. So, pwede na kay nako nga hunungon nako ako ang contribution, then igabot na kong 60 na nakoy pension nga madawat. Pero, very small amount. Gamay kay imong madawat nga pensyon kay minimum man na mura man ay minimum. Okay? Sa mo na nga mas maayog imo nang ilahos. Okay? Diretso na na maghihatag kag contribution kay the more dako imong contribution, syempre the more sa dako imong monthly pension nga madawat. Magdepende man na sa imong gi-contribute ang unsag mo contribute kay diha gamay dako kay imong pension. Okay? Di na may tabo, lugi diretso bankrupt diretso kuan na kumpanya na. So, rapod na, no? Parehas rapod na ani nga discussion na to karon. Okay? So, imuhang deposit, more, kung pila imuhang deposit, more sa imuhang i-withdraw. Pero, with respect, with na, appeal na ang interest na. Okay? So, na ang mitabo, no? Dili pwede nga, palit lang kag dako kay pension diha niya, imuhang gihatag nga contribution, particular gamaya, hindi na pwede. Okay? So, no, muna yung mga perfect example sa pwede ni deposit karon pero yung withdrawal unya na. Okay? Sir, so pwede tayo sir nga, kuhan lang sir, kanang dili lang na kuhunungon. Mas maayo. Ayaw gunong nga imong contribution. Para, let's say, ni-retire ka pag sa isinta. Pag retire niyo pag sa isinta, nakadawat dahil kag pension dayon pag humana na. Di ba? Dako pa yung madawat nga pension. Kay, let's say, nagsugod trabaho, nagsugod kag trabaho, edad 21. Nya pa nahunong ka pag edad nimo og 60. Oh. Pila man na ka years? That is 39 years. Okay? So ang kamang 39 years dako na kay nang makadawat na pension. Okay? So ang problema lang is kung sayo ka matigok. Kung sayo ka matigok, alkansi ka sa imong contribution. Okay? Kaya sayo mo kay ka natigok. Pero kung dili ka butangtag, abot kag edad 100, dili ka makuan dili ka ma-alkanse gikan sa 60 nabot kag edad 100. 40 years ay sobra-sobra pa imong nadawat nga pensyon kumpara sa imong contribution kung inana man gani, no? Okay? Sa mo na akong gingon nga panikamuti sad nga mo-hold on sa kasimong kinabuhi. Kadampo ni mo na abot kag 60, abot na kag kuan, abot na ka og kanang senior citizen. Kadampo ni mo Lord. Kasi pa akong kinabuhi Lord para at least makatabla man lang ko sa akong contribution sa akong pension. Okay. So at least man lang Lord nakatabla man lang ko Lord. Kung pila akong na-deposit at least makatabla man lang ko sa akong akong pension sa pila akong na-deposit Lord. Okay na kay kuan. Tangtag ni retire kay 60 natigok din ka pag 61 basta nagkansihan ni mo gyud. So again mo na no. Problema lang gid ani is dili lang gid ni siya applicable all the time sa bisag unsa nga klase sa mga problems. Okay? So sa mga inani lang nga problems pwede siya ma-apply nga mag-abot siya at the center. Okay? Pero kung dili siya mag-abot at the center, you only have two choices. It's either iabot nimo sa present or iabot nimo sa future. Okay? So far, any questions for this other way of solving problem number 2 or other solution for problem number 2? Any other questions? Mga pangutana. Mga pangutana guys. Yuhu. Wala pangutana? Bibili pa ginako.
Answer.
Bright pa. Okay. Sige, no? So, as usual, maghatag ko og assignment. Technically, unta, sit work, unta kong ihatag. Okay? So, we still have 1 hour and a half. But then again, at ang consideration sa inyong internet connection, butang taghinay ba ka na inyong internet or nag-struggle ba ka mo? So, instead nga, ipapas na ko dayon, as usual, instead nga ipapas na ko dayon og alas 6, ato lang deadline na og alas 9. So mag-post ko karon og assignment, okay? Then you have to submit on or before 9 PM today. Any questions? Nga pangutana. Wala ra. Nang bilibag yun ako. Woo! Okay, no?